Hey, welcome back, everybody. Of course, this is Dr. Keith McNally, and today I'm going to tell you about my daughter. I'm going to talk about my daughter a little bit, and this is going back, reflecting upon the fifth grade experience in terms of just teaching, learning, and education. So, all of you know at this point, I'm a big proponent of educational change. We need to pivot into something better. We don't need to pivot into something different. We need to pivot into something better. And I use those words clearly and specifically. Now, I have a thought on that. And of course, I use project-based learning environments, curriculum, methodology, paradigm, and again, whatever word that you want to use that fits your growth mindset is okay with me. But I want to focus specifically on what I mean by that. So I'm going to give you a story. This story concerns about a specific project that we've had to do as part of the social studies curriculum. So let me frame the project. The project was designed to reinforce certain pieces of the onset of the Industrial Revolution. And so there were four inventors that she had to become familiar with. Eli Whitney was one of them, and for right now, I can't, for the life of me, couldn't tell you what the other three were. But the inventions were specific. They were the cotton gin, the reaper, and the steam engine, specifically to the steamboat and the steam locomotive. Okay, so we get the idea. And what we really wanted to learn, or what students were expected to learn, was how these inventions or these new technologies really made improvements to society, okay, in general speaking. The structure of the project was this. They had the specific content materials right there in their ebook, okay, and then they were given specific instructions on what to do with that content material. Copy paste. So I always say copying pasting is a good skill to have, but it's not going to get you anywhere in the long run. So what they were to do is they were to create a slide deck in Google. They were to create some kind of virtual poster. And at the end of the day, or I should say at the end of the week, they were supposed to create a persuasive essay, because the goal was to become more familiar. And I don't want to say learn in depth, because there was no learning in depth here. They were to become familiar with the content. So inventor, invention, application. And really from a very vague perspective, or ambiguous is a good word too. So with those four inventors, those four inventions, and those immediate, again, vague, improved travel by river, improved travel by land, helped farmers become more productive in, reaping up their produce, and of course the cotton gin. So we are all familiar with those ideas. At the end of the day, she was to write a persuasive essay as if she was going before a producer to say, hey, we need to make a documentary movie based on this content. And she needed to really convince the producer that this was a valuable thing to do. Okay. And that was it. That was the basis of the project itself. It had very specific content, it had very specific deliverables, and in my opinion, very limited learning capabilities. There's very little learning takeaways from here. I don't think it reinforced. And again, I'm not trying to pinpoint problems here. I'm just going to show you a comparison of the project versus the PBL activity. So let's flip the coin. So you see that? I flipped the coin. So let's flip that. Okay. How do we approach this from a PBL activity standpoint? Well, at onset, we're not just dumping all this information onto the students and say, this is what you're expected to do after I just told you what you're going to do. So we open up the PBL activity from what we consider the probing or driving question. How did specific inventions at a certain point of time, and again, I'm just being kind of open-ended here, really improve society at that point of time? So you get the idea. Let's frame it so that's a big picture, but we're asking a question and not just dumping data onto our students. And then from that probing question, we could then say, the teacher now gets involved with a conversation, in a conversation with students. What do you think we need to learn about? You know, who are these inventors? What prompted them to build these inventions? What are these inventions? Can you identify specifically and really in detail, you know, how they impacted society at that time? You know, where were they located? Why was it important to build a steamboat? You know, what was going on in terms of transportation? But you get the idea. So instead of just giving them the information, we have them ask questions by engaging in that conversation. It's asking the questions and then driving the students to find out information. So not just being given, where would we go to find this information? Well, of course, Google is the first place anybody's going to talk about, especially since they use a lot of Google tools anyway in the K-12 system. But you get the idea. There's more than just this, then this. There's an engagement. There's thought-provoking questions. There's putting more responsibility on the students, getting them involved in the research. Identify at least 3 or 4 resources that you went to where you collected your information. And at the end of the day, how do you think this is going to be best produced? Should we create a documentary? Should we be an advocate for continued inventions and the use of technology? Because we see that all the time today. Technology is constantly being produced to make life easier or better or more efficient. So if we look at it from the project perspective, it has a very limited learning takeaways. But if we flip the coin and we put that content into a PBL activity, you can see how much more engaged the student is in terms of the learning, because they're driving their own learning. They're driving their own anticipation of producing something, and they get better overall ownership of the material. Well, that's my soapbox for today. Hopefully this was of value to you. And again, I'm going to continue to support our efforts in changing education and helping you in the classroom. Take care.